What's going on, savages? I've missed you so much. I'm sure if you've gone through a weight loss transformation before, you know that it is really, at the end of the day, a mental battle. This systematic review on the challenges of weight loss maintenance notes that people regain, on average, a third of the weight lost in a year and the rest in 3 to 5 years. The review puts the mental challenges into 3 buckets. 1, old habits and impulses, like how I used to go to Whataburger at 2 a.m. Yeah, Whataburger. It was close to my apartment. Unmet needs, like how I used to use Whataburger to satisfy my emotional needs. Not an emotional eater. No, that's not me.
Darkness, my old friend.
And 3, thoughts and beliefs, like how I believed I was just doomed to be a hot mess for the rest of my life, which is partly still true, but we're all a work in progress, right? So in this video, I'm sharing 3 tips to win the mental battle with weight loss, as inspired by videos on the Clock app and my own experience, and of course, backed by the evidence. Tip number 1, brought to you by Justin Brown, is essentially to avoid what I call the shame spiral. And in a minute, I'm gonna tell you exactly how and why to do that to improve your odds of losing the weight and keeping it off for good. But first, let's meet Dustin. He has just under 500,000 followers on the Clock app at the time of recording this. And I think he's the first male transformation I've highlighted, but I think his story is very relatable because he talks a lot about how he went through a weight loss transformation and regained back all the weight and then some. Let's watch his story. So 475 pounds, feeling hopeless, tired, sick, but he decided to fight for my life. He lost over 250 pounds and felt unstoppable. Over the next several years, he regained all the weight back to over 400 pounds. He lost trust in himself and confidence. He just lost hope until finally, I let go of the past and I forgave myself and decided to fight again. He lost 285 pounds. He fought for his life and won. Now, I don't know Dustin's whole story. I've never met the guy, and I know his transformation is very extreme. But if I were to guess, based on what we know about how people lose the weight and keep it off, I would guess that the first time he did so in a way where he associated certain foods with shame, as in he bucketed certain foods as good or bad. Now think to yourself for a second. Do you bucket certain foods as good or bad? Many people do this. We look at sugar as bad. We look at carbs sometimes as bad. We look at fast food as bad. A lot of diets will do this in order to make it easier for people to be in a calorie deficit and lose the weight. For example, a popular diet right now is the ketogenic diet. And in the ketogenic diet, carbs to a certain extent are pretty much off limits. You can't eat a lot of them. And so if you're on the ketogenic diet and you eat carbs that are bad, by association, you might think of yourself as being bad. It's very hard for most people to break that association. And so when you're bad, you feel shame, which is a very toxic and crippling emotion that only yields more unwanted behavior. Here's how the shame spiral works. Denoting certain foods as bad or eliminating them from your diet helped you lose weight. You lose the weight, then reintegrate the foods into your life because they're great and you're a human being. Then you feel bad about yourself because you labeled the food as bad for so long. And so you enter the shame spiral, eating more of the bad food because it's like, you were already bad. I think a lot of people go through this. But do you see how it starts with labeling the food as bad as opposed to just being neutral about it? I once said in a video, there's no such thing as bad foods, just bad portion sizes, and people lost their comments. Because as a culture, we're so used to labeling foods as bad. We have cheat meals or cheat days where we're allowed to indulge on the bad foods and cheat. But for your mental health, which is foundational for sustainable weight loss, labeling foods as bad will hurt you. And in a minute, we're gonna go exactly into the psychology of why. Now, most people on the cutting edge of nutrition can agree that limiting ultra-processed foods and incorporating more fruits and vegetables are both good things. And when someone does these things, major biomarkers of health will improve. And weight loss will become easier because you feel more satiated on less calories. We know this. No one's debating it. No one's disagreeing on this point. The reason why labeling foods as bad backfires in so many people is partly due to a principle called psychological reactance. Reactance is defined as an unpleasant motivational arousal that emerges when people experience a threat or loss to their free behaviors. And it serves as a motivator to restore one's freedom. So if you're on a diet where you completely have to eliminate sugars or carbs and call them bad, your brain is naturally going to be more motivated to seek those things out than it would be if you were just neutral about them. The takeaway here is, if you want to win the mental battle with weight loss, you have to eliminate shameful language and thoughts around food. Otherwise, what happens is you will very likely regain the weight when you allow those foods back into your diet, because for so long you've had to neglect that motivation to seek them out and enjoy them. Essentially, you'll fall into the shame spiral. Even when dieting, let's say you're at a party and you see a piece of cake and you're like, I really want that piece of cake, have a little slice of cake and let that satisfy the craving. Because the more you believe that this cake is off limits, the more motivated you will be later to seek out the cake. Dustin, thank you so much for your page. He talks a lot about the mental health battle in a very vulnerable way, and I think that's very brave and wonderful. So go ahead and check him out on the Clock app if you want to. Tip number 2 is to avoid the comparison trap, and that is brought to you by Hannah. And in a minute, I'm gonna share with you the best way to do that, because I think we all compare ourselves to others from time to time. Let's see what she has to say. What people think the hardest part is the workouts, but what it actually is, I want to look like her. It's the comparison game, she's saying. So why do we compare ourselves in the first place? To put it bluntly, as humans, we're just slightly more evolved monkeys, just slightly. We've got self-driving cars, we're now like meditating, or at least we are aware that just meditating 3 minutes a day can have profound effects on your health. However, at the end of the day, we're still very much social animals, and our desire to compare really started off as just a way to survive in our social environment. So wanting to compare is normal. It would be weird if you didn't want to compare. It's a survival thing. Where comparison becomes an issue is when we fail to realize that it's our unique differences that make us valuable to the group. If you look at how tribes and communities survived back in the day, everyone brought something different to the table. You had the medicine man or woman who helped people heal. You had the soldiers or politicians who helped negotiate for more land and resources. You had the mothers who kept generations of the tribe going. Everyone had their unique strengths and differences, and valuing those differences is what makes a tribe strong. The same is true for aesthetics. That's why we have so many different types of cars, clothes, and jewelry, because people appreciate different looks. The same is true for people. But why do we always forget this? Why do we feel like we're not beautiful enough, or we're not attractive enough, or we're not whatever? And that's partly because society and the media set the standard for this, because it keeps us buying more shit. It keeps the economy going. There's other reasons, of course, but this is a big part of it. Most people let society and the media dictate what the standard is for them, and they don't question it. But when you set your own standard of beauty, when you choose to own your own differences, that is what really makes someone beautiful. For example, when I was younger and I didn't know any better, Victoria's Secret models were the standard of beauty. But I'm like 5'3" on a good day. I have Pacific Islander heritage, so it's just in my DNA to be short and carry more fat and muscle. So it was never in the cards for me to look like that standard of beauty at the time. And let me tell you guys, I put myself through hell to try and look like that. It made no freaking sense. It wasn't until I started to embrace my own differences that I started to actually enjoy taking care of myself and my body. So the key takeaway here is wanting to compare yourself is normal, but owning and celebrating your differences is what will truly make you beautiful. And the third tip here is brought to you by Hope. And the takeaway here is to question your beliefs around food. I've shared this before, but it's definitely worth sharing again. Let's see what she had to say.
I think the hardest part of my weight loss journey was finding out I don't have to be disgustingly overly full to finish my meal. In my brain, before I lost 100 pounds, I had to feel sick to my stomach before leaving the table. Now, I know that if my stomach feels full, I feel happy, there's no hunger, I can stop eating and I cannot finish the plate, and it's okay.
Some of you are gonna think that belief is pretty trivial. Eat until you're full and then walk away. But if you think about it, our habits and beliefs around food have been ingrained in us since we were like 2 years old, maybe even younger than that. We adopt all this stuff from our parents and our surroundings. Even the negative associations with food, like I said before, some of that is going to be passed down from our parents, where they oftentimes praised us for eating our vegetables or reprimanded us for wanting ice cream. In other people, it might be that they believe they need to restrict too much in order to lose weight, or that they have to demonize carbs and sugar to lose weight, because maybe that's the only thing that worked for them in the past. My husband is what I call protein anorexic. I don't know if that's the right word for it. I think a lot of men struggle with this because they don't want to lose gains. But he was so obsessed and focused with getting enough protein that oftentimes he would go over his calorie deficit and end up overeating. Or sometimes he would just allocate all his calories to protein and end up never feeling satiated. Everyone's gonna have different beliefs around food, but an exercise you could do right now is just write down all the beliefs you currently have around food and question whether or not those beliefs are actually valid in the science. Maybe there's something that you're not aware of or that you're not seeing. For example, in my husband's case, he started to learn that he didn't need to eat as much protein as he thought he once did, and this allowed him to be in a calorie deficit and start losing some fat. In my case, for a long time, I always thought that I had to demonize certain food groups in order to lose fat, and that if I, somehow went to Chick-fil-A or went to Taco Bell, like, the diet was all over. That just makes no sense. If you're wondering why I'm sitting down and I've been feeling so out of breath, I've been kind of MIA on YouTube, it is because I am 6 months pregnant. A lot of you guys caught that in the comments in the last few videos, so thank you. I love you guys so much, and I will see you guys in the next video.